over to you, Casey, to introduce our session today.
Hey, awesome, everybody. Hey, welcome. Dan Ward, I consider Dan a friend. And Dan kickstarted, is one of the guys that kickstarted inside the company, both work in a company called MITRE, something called the Innovation Toolkit, which is, I'm not going to steal Dan's thunder. You guys, he'll do an amazing job discussing it. What Dan brings is 20 plus years as a retired Air Force officer doing techie kind of stuff inside the Air Force. And he is a innovation driver and a pusher of change. And in his own words, he's a highly caffeinated individual. And with that, Dan, I figure we just turn it right over to you. I think we have about an hour of your time today. I'd love for you to give an overview of the Innovation Toolkit, your thoughts, and take us through some exercises.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for this chance to spend some time together. Casey, thanks for the invite and letting me know that Nova Scribes exists. I'm excited that this kind of group is a thing. Again, my name's Dan Ward. I'm with the MITRE Corporation. As you might have heard, and Casey sort of hinted at, we work at the same company. MITRE is a not-for-profit systems engineering company. We are chartered to work in the public interest, and our mandate is to solve problems to make the world a safer place. So my day job is military technology type stuff. I did 20 years, like Casey said, as an engineer and program manager in the U.S. Air Force. But then along the way, I started picking up a couple of the little side hustles. So I wrote a couple of books, which you can kind of see displayed face out behind me. I'll put a link in the chat if anybody wants to download some free excerpts and learn more about those. But then about 2017, 5 of us here at MITRE got together and we launched what became the Innovation Toolkit. It was a set of practitioners, sort of a multidisciplinary set of practitioners, engineers, human-centered designers, people with artistic backgrounds, people with no musical background whatsoever, like myself, but a really interesting little group. And we, over the course of working with a mobile dentistry startup, I think I love everything about that sentence, a mobile dentistry startup. We discovered that, like, oh, I have some tools and techniques that I use with the work that I do, and you have some tools and techniques that you use with the work you do. Hey, I'll teach you mine, you teach me yours. And over time, we figured out, like, what if we write these down? What if we share them with the rest of the company? What if we share them with sponsors? What if we had a website? What if we wrote some books? So fast forward, now that team of 5 has grown into upwards of 60 across the company. We were all in the Boston area originally. Now we're in California, Utah, Texas, all around the world. Well, let me kind of dive into what it is we do. So our vision for this innovation toolkit is to democratize innovation. So democratize innovation. What do we mean by that? We want to make sure everybody has access to what we call the 4 T's: the tools, the techniques, the training, and the teammates that you need to be an effective innovator. So tools, techniques, training, and teammates. And if our vision is to democratize innovation, so everybody has access to all of these, that's our aspirational future that we're working towards. Our mission, our concrete, like, daily activities, is we spend time helping people understand what innovation is and how to do it. So what innovation is and how to do it. That begins with a definition. What innovation is not just limited to defining it. Like, it's fine to have a good definition, and I'll give you our definition in a moment here, but also helping people to understand, what does innovation mean in your space, in your domain, and the work that you do as a, in a visual space, in an engineering space, in a leadership space, in an organizational space. So actually, let me ask, I've used that word innovation a couple times. Does anybody have a good working definition? Like, what does that word mean to you in the space that you're working in? Bruce, go ahead.
I usually refer to it as applied creativity, or creative thinking applied.
Oh, applied creativity. I love that definition. Yeah. Anybody else?
Doing things differently than we did before.
Oh, doing things differently. That is a big part of innovation. Correlates with the creativity, like Bruce mentioned. So the definition that we like to use on the Innovation Toolkit is a 3-word definition, which is one of the things I like about it, because I can remember 3 words. And our 3 words are novelty with impact. Novelty with impact. So I like it because it's short enough for me to remember. I also like it because it's accurate. So when we say novelty with impact, novelty or creativity or doing things different, that is the thing that distinguishes an innovative solution from a status quo solution. So novelty could refer to new technologies, new processes, new organizational structures, new communication methods, new graphic facilitation techniques, anything that's sort of new or different, creative, unusual, different than the status quo, that fits under that umbrella of novelty. So I like it because this definition is broad enough to be used in a wide range of situations. And then impact, that can refer to saving time, saving money, saving lives. It could be increasing value, solving a problem, making something better. Anything that sort of speaks to improvement or application in a meaningful sense. That sort of falls under that umbrella of impact. So novelty with impact could be a new technology that saves lives. It could be a new process that saves time. It could be a new organizational structure that saves money. It could be X that does Y, something different that makes a difference. And that's the other definition we like to use, is something different that makes a difference. Because we do find that having different versions of this thing makes a difference, can be helpful, right? But the thing I like most about that definition, novelty with impact, is that it puts 2 key questions on the table. What is novel about the thing that you do or that you're proposing? What's novel about your innovation work? And what impact are you having? If we can describe the novelty of our work and we can describe the type of impact that we're aiming to have, now we can have a meaningful conversation about innovation. Because it avoids that sort of innovation theater or innovation for innovation's sake. Typically, when we find innovation for innovation's sake, it's because we've overvalued novelty and we've undervalued impact. Hey, it's new, it's shiny, it's different. Does it make a difference? If we have novelty without impact, that's just creativity. And I like creativity. Creativity is great. Yes, please, more creativity. We love it. But I'm going to make a distinction between creativity and innovation, because innovation has that impact. It solves a problem, creates value, saves lives, or whatever goes with that. So let me pause for a second. Thoughts, questions, responses to this definition of novelty with impact. Does that resonate with you? Do you kind of follow where we're going with that? Cool. I see a couple thumbs up, some heads nodding.
We get
And
emojis. I forgot about that.
oh, nice. So I want to kind of invite you all over the next period of time to think about what is novel about the thing that you do and what impact are you having? And I will add that, well, a couple of thoughts on novelty. Novelty is overrated. As a guy who writes books about innovation, I will tell you, novelty is overrated. Don't get too attached to your novelty for a couple of reasons. Familiarity reduces novelty. As soon as you introduce a novel idea or a novel technique or novel technology to the world, people like it, they use it, and it becomes familiar. And guess what? It's not novel anymore. That doesn't mean it's not impactful anymore. That doesn't mean it's not innovative anymore. But yeah, like your phone, exactly. These were incredible. Like nobody had heard of them when they first came out. Now everybody has one. Still super impactful. But also, although novelty is overrated, the fact that that a concept, a practice, a technology or something exists in one domain, but doesn't exist in another domain, it could be new to this other domain. That counts as novelty. So to use my military background, if the Navy does something and the Air Force has never done it, that could constitute novelty for the Air Force. If some other company has done a thing and this other company has never done that thing, that constitutes as novelty for that company. Or if it's something from industry that we bring into academia, something from the health domain that we apply to cybersecurity, like these count as valid forms of novelty. All right, I think that, so we've talked on innovation toolkit overview, definition, vision, mission. Let's get into using one of these tools, right? So I said the mission of innovation toolkit is to help people understand what innovation is and how to do it. That discussion that I just sort of laid out of the novelty and the differences and the the questions. That's a piece of the what is novelty in your, or what is innovation in your space. But how to do it, that's where the tools come in. Okay, so we've assembled a set of 26, last I checked, about 26 different tools and techniques and methods that are designed really to help people work together more effectively, to deliver innovative solutions to hard problems. That's what these tools aim to do. Two words that we use a lot with this toolkit are clarity and consensus. A lot of those tools aim to help people get clarity and consensus around maybe what is the problem we're trying to solve, who are we and what do we do around here, what's our mission, what's our vision, what does success look like, what are we trying to accomplish, who are the stakeholders, how do we engage them. There's a million questions around this type of work, and these tools aim to get a shared understanding or clarity and consensus on that. So the tool we're going to start off with first is something called a lotus blossom. Has anybody ever done a lotus blossom exercise before? Casey obviously has. Yeah, Bruce, you use a lotus blossom? Talk to me about what have you done with a lotus blossom, or what do you know about a lotus blossom?
It's been a long time, so I can't really talk to it.
Cool, good. Excellent. So a lotus blossom is an ideation tool. This is probably our most frequently used tool in the toolkit. And so anytime you hear brainstorming, forget brainstorming. Brainstorming is kind of a crappy way to come up with ideas. Lotus blossom as a tool is something we found helps people come up with a larger quantity of higher quality ideas than unstructured brainstorming alone. So I'm going to put a link into the chat here. If you click on that link, it'll open up a new window in your browser. And when it does, you should see basically a 9x9 grid of colored squares. Let me navigate over there too. All right, I see some folks coming in here. So you should see this 9x9 grid of colored squares. Is that link not working for anybody? Anybody not able to get into this tab in your browser?
It works for me, and I'm going to screen share just for the recording.
Even better.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. That's my next question. Is there somebody can screen share it? Wonderful. Okay. Okay, so I see you screen sharing. Rachel, in that screen share, can you zoom in to just sort of in those colored squares? Yeah, so we can skip all the instructions. I'll take care of that. Okay, so this 9x9 grid of colored squares, this is what we call our lotus blossom canvas. You might notice that it's divided into 3x3 little quadrants that are each of the same color. Those 3x3 groupings, we tend to call those blossoms. And each individual box, we refer to that as a petal, just for orientation. So I can refer to, in the 12 o'clock position, the pink blossom that has the word opportunities in the middle. In the upper left-hand petal, I'm just going to write the word test. So hopefully you could all follow along. The upper left-hand petal of the 12 o'clock pink blossom, that's labeled opportunities. I wrote the word test there. So I see visiting owl is moving your mouse around there too. All right, so I'm going to delete the word test. Okay, so you're kind of following along with where we're at. And this is using a site called Mural. Let me summon you all so you'll see what I see. There we go. So it's basically an online whiteboard. Okay, so in the central blossom, in the central 3x3 grid of lots of colored squares, there's a white box, a white petal, and that's where we put the topic of our ideation, the topic that we're going to do some brainstorming around. In this case, I put moving visual practice forward, just as a proposed topic. Like that might be something we might want to do some ideation around. How do we help move this practice of visual practitioners, this discipline, this body? How do we move that forward? What does that look like? So in the 8 petals around it, we're going to write down 8 facets that are related to moving visual practice forward. So I put, what are some problems that we're tackling in the upper left-hand gray box? And you can see the word problems is duplicated in the upper left-hand petal. So that becomes the central topic. And in the 8 gray petals around it, we're going to list 8 problems. 8 problems that this, visual practitioner community works on. Similarly, the 12 o'clock position, the pink one, we have opportunities. that blossoms up to the 12 o'clock blossom. And we're going to come up with 8 things that are opportunities. So yeah, we got training for better meetings, same kind of deal. That continues to blossom out. So are we tracking, are we following along with how this works? Anybody have any questions so far?
So Dan, is it fair to say that central theme goes in the center, whatever you're interested in? You kind of build out some of the first things that might come to mind for the group outside of that 9 petals outside. Then you essentially do a deep dive into, there's a submarine under me, a deep dive into each one of those to expand it a little bit more.
Exactly. So the art to this is we want to make sure we don't get too specific too fast in those central blossom. We don't want to write like Thursday's meeting at 7 o'clock, because that doesn't have the next level of granularity available to us. We might have training for better meetings. We see that in the upper right, the yellow blossom. So what will be some elements of training for better meetings? We might talk about who needs it, who we can offer it, what are the topics, things that would go into that. So learning skills, I see somebody wrote that in the blue lower right hand. We're going to copy that word learning skills. I'm going to put that in the bottom right. I see community. Yep, there we go. You're doing it. Now it's open to everybody, and these are just sort of yellow. These are sticky notes. You can click on any one of them and just begin typing in them directly. You can begin filling in some of the details. My favorite one is the barriers blossom in the lower left-hand corner. What's the stuff that gets in the way? What are the friction points? Kind of my personal lotus blossom hack. I try to use a barriers blossom every time I do one of these. For any topic, there's something that gets in the way. Some cause of friction that's going to slow us down or prevent us from making progress. Let's make sure we capture some of those as well. The other invitation I want to give you is feel free to come off mute if you're in a place where you can come off mute. I like to use this to sort of document the discussion. So when you type something in, I'm going to say a few words about the thing that you're typing in. As you're writing something down, say a few words about what you're writing down, just so that it's a more participative, more of a social event than than just a bunch of people silently filling out stickies. I'll switch to my other mic and see if I get better quality sound here.
Hey, thank you.
Dan, could you explain to me again? It's getting near my bedtime. Apologies.
Sure.
The topic, moving visual practice forward. What does that? Can you expand on that? What does that mean?
That's a great question. I might actually toss that to Casey, since I think that was something that you had suggested as a possible topic.
And this is one of the things we talked about. This is a visual practitioner community, and I know Adam and Cindy from another area, and they're kind enough to come today. So a way to think about this is when I think about visual practitioners, I think of these are people who often help teams get better clarity into what they're doing. For example, I think of visual practitioners often as people who are expert facilitators and helping people communicate. And they do this by visuals. A way to think about this, or another way, if moving visual practitioners forward, we might want to add, build upon Dan's thought, to create better meetings, right? There might be a way to add something to that. So a thought here is, how can we create better meetings? And to build upon Dan's thoughts, what are some of the problems we have in meetings? What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the skills we can learn? What's the community have? What are some of the barriers? So that might be an easier thing to build upon, is basically, if you're a visual practitioner, how can you bring the visual practitioner expertise to create better meetings? If you're not a visual practitioner, someone who uses visuals to help communicate with others, how can we just create better meetings?
Thank you. That's helpful.
Love it.
So Rachel, what would you add to that? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that was good. And I think there can be 2 questions around like moving a personal visual practice forward, like building your personal skills and like skill building. And, I was kind of over here thinking about like the skills of actually making conversations visual. And then, you know, I put in community, and I think that's one of the ways that even Nova Scribes works to move the practice of visual work forward, is to just create a container in which people can have conversations and give exposure to what it is and what it might look like and how people might use it in very powerful ways. So I think that's another way you can think about moving the practice forward. So I think there's the different approaches of like the visual practice as a skill, visual practice as an industry, visual practice as a tool, visual practice as a way to make change in communities and companies and cultures and things like that. So there's lots of different, approaches I think you can think about the topic.
So I think
Terrific.
it's, Dan, what's in your mind? What are you thinking?
Oh, I liked everything you just said, Rachel. I tried to capture a couple of those into some of these stickies. And one of our kind of rules of thumb is if you think it, ink it. So this is one of the exercises where we try and suspend judgment. If an idea pops into your head, write it down somewhere. And hey, if we need to move it from one blossom to another, we can always move it around. But I just want to make sure we capture in the lotus blossom somewhere all the things that you just described. How about you, Cindy? Any thoughts on all of this?
I did add one. I mean, I think I'm getting it.
Sure.
I added lack of buy-in from participants, because Casey's helped us with some of his, his visual techniques, and I could see that in like a sort of a conservative organization, I don't know how they feel about kind of cartoons and sort of stuff we do. So I put that.
Yeah. Sure. So overcoming sort of the barriers of credibility. If I'm going to come in and you're going to do cartoons for what now? So helping people understand the value. Yeah.
Ooh, marketing exposure. Ooh. Oh.
I am adding a few more blank barriers color blossoms in the lower left-hand corner. So that's one of the nice things with a lotus blossom is you can overflow. You can kind of continue to go along if you need more than 9 boxes.
Now, Dan, when you give us the groups beforehand, you've done this a fair amount. How often do you? I'm just curious. When have you seen groups say, yeah, 64, that's a lot to come up with.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, would you mind sharing a story where you've seen maybe a breakthrough or something's happened where just by going through and pushing yourself a little bit further, it's helpful?
Sure. So actually I did one of these just this afternoon. MITRE had a bunch of college interns, and we showed them the lotus blossom, and we had them walk through a lotus blossom, and they kind of stalled out. And this happens very, very frequently with the lotus blossom. The first 2 or 3 ideas that you put are the obvious ones, the front of mind ones, the ones that we're all sort of familiar with. And look, I mean, we got 3 or 4 in many of these blossoms. And then it tends to stall out right around 3 or 4. So the technique that I used with the students today is I said, all right, everybody, grab your stickies, grab your notebook, grab your pens, because we were in person. I said, I'm putting 15 seconds on the clock. And in 15 seconds, I want you to write down something. What do you know? All of them figured out something they could write down in 15 seconds. And that seemed to be the thing that unlocked them, like, oh, I'm allowed to write this down. Oh, you know what else I could write down? And then it sort of got them moving forward. So yeah, sometimes we'll use techniques like that. Other times it just ends up overflowing sort of automatically. And there's a couple other techniques we can use to nudge folks along. One I'll often do is sort of highlight, hey, this upper left-hand blocks doesn't seem to have a lot in it. What would you put there? Hey, we're really good on barriers. I think we can leave the barriers for now, but let's talk about learning skills. What are some of these learning skills? And then the question that I ask in virtually every ITK session I've ever led, who have we not heard from? Just to create the space for the people who maybe haven't had a chance to share yet. Is there anybody we haven't heard from? Do you have anything that you want to add?
I have a question.
Mhm.
So, like, if the topic were different, center topic were different, do you always start with like including problems, opportunities, technology, barriers, community? Is there certain like core areas, regardless of what the, you know, what you're, the problem that you're or the topic that you want to address? Is that all the same?
Great question, Cindy. The only petal that I include in all my lotus blossoms is the barriers petal. Occasionally, like what we did with this one, we'll sort of precede it with a few initial petals in that central blossom that we think might be relevant to the topic. But that will really vary by topic, you know, because sometimes we're dealing with technology, sometimes we're dealing with policy, sometimes we're dealing with, moving forward a practice to make better meetings. So things like problems and opportunities, yeah, those can be fairly common. Like you'll see those in a lot of lotus blossoms, but not everyone. So as you kind of read through, another sort of thing that we'll do when we kind of hit this point, read through what's here. Are there any items on here that you would like to ask a question about? Or is there anything that you wrote down that you would like to say a few more words about? Again, if the idea is to document our discussion, have the discussion. So anything stand out here that anybody wants to ask a question about? So I'm intrigued by just show up at any meeting.
Oh,
Who wrote that one? I love that under opportunities. Just show up at any meeting.
I don't know if I wrote that one, but I wrote just put paper on the wall. And I think that's something for like, especially with graphic recording and starting to take visual notes, you just kind of start doing it or sketchnoting and then just showing people like it's kind of the not even it's just do it and not ask permission.
Right.
And then as a way to show the value of it and as a way to invite people in, because it's, you know, like showing instead of telling, because telling someone about it, it often is something that might not, they don't quite get it, but when they see it happening, then they're like, okay, it's like, it's easier to start doing it and creating opportunities for more visual, more places to do it.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Right. I love it.
And that I put down, I believe.
Oh, go ahead.
Just show up at any meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more words about that too?
No, I think that's perfect what Rachel said.
Yeah.
It's just doing it. It's just making it happen.
Sure.
Whether you're paid or not.
Right. I think and Casey is a master of this when we're having our virtual meetings. He's constantly holding up a yellow sticky that he's drawn some little cartoon on it that's just like, oh, that's a really good depiction of the thing that we were just talking about. So although the version of the lotus blossom you're looking at here is all text, in person in particular, you could certainly imagine filling this out with, more graphical elements or a combination of graphical elements and words.
But I would even argue that this in itself is a visual practice because, you could just do this verbally but here we're making it so people can see it and it's just adding another layer and even just like sharing the screen. And this is a version of visual practice. So it's again, sometimes, especially if you're in a meeting and you want to just be sneaky, you just kind of start taking notes and just share your screen and maybe, or depending on the meeting, in a mural. And then I've done it kind of before. This conversation, like it's not staying like it's so much more valuable for me personally to write things down and see things. And
Mhm.
so just getting in the habit of doing that publicly, really. And then I think that goes also go back to down to the barriers or maybe problems is the fear. And, you know, as far as moving visual practice forward, like, you know, the fear of being seen drawing stick figures is one thing, but also the permission that people get when they see someone drawing stick figures and how impactful that can be helps lower that barrier and invites people in. And I think that moves the practice forward as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
There's something that came to mind here. I never thought about this before. Maybe it was the conversation with Rachel and Dan and Bruce and some of the feedback here is that, and Dan and Pablo, there's no reason why you can start with the group and just say, hey, this is the challenge we have. What are the first 8, 9 ideas that come to you? And write those on the wall. Then from a visual practitioner standpoint, now let's move this one up here. Let's do a deep dive into that. So, and as a facilitator or as a lead, what you're doing in that moment, you're actually giving them permission to expand upon those. You can do this in a visual practitioner. And I tell you, when you see this on a wall for the first time for a group, when you like, because often what Dan, you build this out in stickies, right? You'll build this out in a big sticky wall and you have groups fill it out. It's a little overwhelming when they walk up and see all the blank space up there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming. And at the same time, once we begin filling it in, like let's look at the lower right-hand corner, the dark blue blossom. We've got 2 empty spots.
Oh.
There's something about 2 empty spots, 2 empty boxes that we sort of have a visceral reaction to of like, oh, I want to fill those in, right? I want to fill those in. And that's kind of the magic of the lotus blossom. It has a psychological impact on us and makes us want to like come up with, all right, I use all the obvious ideas. I used all the basic ideas. Well, just to fill it in with something, that's often where the magic happens.
Dan, I have a question about this tool.
Sure.
Why repeat the name of the blossom in the middle as well as in the middle of the blossom? When you got the key right there, you know, like the blue, you see learning skills in the middle square,
right?
And then you have it again, right there.
Gotcha. Why
repeat that? It's like maybe there could be another solution or idea.
Yeah, fair question. I think we just find that it helps people orient and remember what that blossom is about by repeating the word learning skills. And it sort of breaks it up into 2 steps. So step 1 is identifying the 8 petals in the central blossom, learning skills, community barriers. Like, what are those? And then like, by including it in the external blossoms as the central petal for each one, it kind of anchors it a little bit visually. I don't know that we would lose a lot if we didn't repeat it, except it just a little bit of orientation. Like I got to keep looking back to the central blossom. Wait, what was this one about again? So I think it's fair to experiment. Like try it without that. Yeah.
One possibility is to just put attributes of that thing in that in the center blossom.
Sure. Yeah.
That way you have it kind of defined. You have the same thing, but it's defined. I don't know. Just a thought.
Right. I think that's interesting suggestion to experiment with. This is just how we sort of learned the lotus blossom. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it.
And I think one thing Bruce said, this is the good thing about innovation. We talk about novelty in some ways. Bruce coming, having worked this before and seeing it the first time in a long time. I was thinking the same thing. It's just the way I was used to doing it. There's no reason why you can't do it the other way.
Right. Absolutely.
And I'm a lazy facilitator. So what happens I often do as we write out those 9 things in the center, I'll just pull that Post-it note and put it in the center of the other section. So that's a great way to. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I love it.
The other observation I might make about that is that by filling that center square, it's like, you know, the free space on bingo. You kind of, it's like you're breaking the barrier of the 9 boxes and now it's 8 boxes and you have the free square in the middle. So sometimes depending on the group that might help just break that that barrier of starting to write.
Right. It's like removing the first piece of pizza out of the pizza. We've sort of broken the barrier a little bit. And as you can see here, if we do need more than 8, the barriers has those 3 extra orange ones on the outside. And I do see the one that says a lotus blossom is a mind map. Yes. So if you're familiar with mind mapping is just like a lotus blossom, only just take away all the boxes. And then there's your mind map. And the reason I like lotus blossom more than mind mapping, because mind mapping, it's really easy to draw those 3 branches and the 3 ideas, the obvious ones, and then call it done. Like there's nothing in mind mapping that forces you to go to the 7th, 8th, 9th idea.
Yeah.
I've also seen mind mapping be a very effective way for some groups love it, and like, oh, all these boxes is too much structure. We hate it. So one thing I'll often do is, especially if I have a big group, divide the group in half. You all do your ideation using a lotus blossom. The other group does their ideation using a mind map. And then you have them brief each other out. And it's interesting to see, the different quantities and qualities of ideas that come out of the two. And there's always something good about them both. So yeah, this basically is a structured mind mapping technique.
Yeah, and I like that because I feel like it's depending on the group, sometimes some group, like you said, some groups want more structure. And that, it's like going back to this article I read or whatever, where like the kindergartners on the playground, if there's a fence, they'll go all over the edges of the playground, but there's no fence, they'll stay close to the center. And so
Yes.
depending on the group dynamics and things like that, sometimes people need the fence because then they'll go all the way to the fence. And then over here, it's like you found you went all the way to the end and like, oh, I want to go explore over here and just go outside.
Yeah, we found the hole in the fence, right?
Or we created one.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Cool. Well, unless there's any other questions or thoughts or comments on the Lotus Blossom, I did want to show you one other tool real quick, our problem framing canvas. But Bruce, go ahead.
And maybe you're about to go there. I see you put down problem framing canvas, but I think it'd be worthwhile before we actually do a blossom like that, this actually talk about that definition, which is moving visual moving visual practice or to create better meetings. So to just create some definition around, a little more definition. So you did define, someone did define visual practice, but not forward. What do we mean by forward? What do we mean by better meetings? So having a conversation about that, maybe even doing a blossom on that.
Right, absolutely. So like I said, this is probably our most frequently used tool because you can use it in so many different ways. This is a divergent thinking tool. Helps you come up with a large quantity of ideas. Next step is often to use a convergent tool where we sort of distill it down to its essence. And by starting off here, we can kind of explore like, well, what is the question we're really trying? What do we mean by forward? And what are we really trying to do here? So it can often be helpful to do an unstructured, open-ended Lotus Blossom like this as kind of fodder for a second tool like the problem framing canvas. So having had this conversation, we put up a bunch of stickies on the wall. Now we go over to this problem framing thing. And it's a different type of tool. This is a set of questions. And if you can kind of zoom into the part with all the little yellow stickies there on the screen share, it begins by asking, what is the problem? Okay, and then this tool aims to help teams get clarity and consensus around the question of what problem are we trying to solve. And when we begin in that upper left-hand corner, what is the problem? We quickly discover a couple things. We don't know what the problem is. There's more than one problem in the world. We care about a lot of different problems, and we don't have a clear description of what the problem even is. What do we mean by moving visual practice forward? I often say that this could be a 30-second exercise. If one person in the room says, I know what the problem is this. And we go around the room, yep. We all agree that nailed it. Great, we're done. We go to lunch early. I have never seen that happen because inevitably what happens is somebody says, I think the problem is this. I'll tell you what the problem is. Somebody else is like, well, but what about that? But did you consider this? I thought the problem was this other thing entirely. And we discovered that a lot of people had ideas of what the problem is, but we didn't have consensus. So this is very much a consensus building tool. And at the end of it, and I'll sort of spoiler alert, we'll fast forward to the end here. Typically what we come out with at the end as a problem statement, somebody will say, that's what I said at the beginning. And I'm like, actually, no, you didn't. If you had said that at the beginning, we would have left, after 30 seconds. But really what they're saying is that's what I was trying to say at the beginning. And we didn't have clarity. We didn't have consensus. So what this does is it helps us hold up a lot of different facets of the problem. So let's dig into this, this visual practitioner thing. What is the problem that visual practice helps us address? What do you think? You can say it out loud. You can type it in one of these stickies in the upper left-hand corner. What is the problem that visual practice helps us address, or that visual practitioners set out to address?
Ooh, I'll touch something.
Ambiguity.
So we're helping address the problem of ambiguity. I like it.
Lack of clarity and lack of consensus.
Bam, right? Hey, this is similar to what the ITK tries to solve. Yes. Which again, I think it is related. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And over the course of an hour, we would have a more detailed, richer description or discussion around these things. We would list some symptoms. So ambiguity is a problem. What are the symptoms of ambiguity? Could be nobody talks at the meetings.
Confusion.
Confusion.
Being stuck and doing the same thing, expecting different results.
Right. We're not moving forward because we don't know what forward means, like Bruce was asking. Yeah. So as we begin to list this out, and these set of stickies can become, people had a whole bunch of stickies in this area. One of the next questions here is, why haven't we solved this problem? Guys, I love that question. Why haven't we solved it? Because sometimes the answer to that is it's a new problem. It just popped up. We haven't had a chance to solve it yet. That's a good thing to know about this problem. We haven't solved it because it's new. Or sometimes it's just a hard problem. Or there's no easy solution to it. It's just a difficult problem to tackle. Okay, great. Let's acknowledge that we're going to deal with a hard problem. My favorite one, though, is it's a low priority problem. We're not going to solve this one because we're just going to live with it. Because we're going to spend our energies and our resources and our attention and our efforts solving higher priority problems. If people check that box, that we agree the problem is this, and we agree it is a low priority problem, that's kind of cool. Like we can sort of go to lunch early again, or we might restart the movie by saying, okay, well, what is a higher priority problem? But it can be really helpful to acknowledge that, yes, this is a real problem. Yes, you care about it. Yes, it bothers you, but it's a low priority problem, and we're not going to solve it next. Right? We're going to solve something else next. We might solve that one after next, but we're not going to solve that next. And then we can go into other reasons, resources, authority, some other inequities, other reasons why we haven't solved it. Then we can get into how are we part of the problem? What are the assumptions and biases around the problem? Over on the right-hand side, we begin to get much more specific. Who experiences the problem? When and where? What are the consequences? Because things like ambiguity, lack of clarity and consensus, these are good attributes of a problem. Ambiguity for who? When? Why is that a problem? What are the consequences of this ambiguity? And how does your experience of ambiguity differ from Bruce's, differ from Casey's, differ from Rachel's, right? So we begin to have that really rich conversation where people can write some stuff down on the stickies and then say a few words out loud or ask some questions about it. Wait, what do you mean by moving forward? What do you mean by ambiguity? So are you kind of tracking how you could use a tool like this? Mm-hmm. So this is one of my favorite tools to use at the beginning of a project. Hey, we got a bunch of people together. We're going to start this thing. What's the problem we're trying to solve before we even begin? Let's get clarity and consensus around that. Gang, it's also one of my favorite tools to use halfway through a project. Hey, do we still have clarity and consensus around what the problem is? Oftentimes the answer is no, right? And that's an important thing to know, because I'll tell you, it can be hard to get a clear problem statement, but it's even harder? Solving a problem that you haven't defined clearly. So it's a good one to start with. It's a good one to revisit, especially if you've already done it once, revisit it partway through. We're just going to confirm our assumptions. We're going to check for our biases. We're going to identify, are we making progress on this problem? Then the second row there, it gets into questions like, who else has this problem? You know, there are some dogs that get the similar types of tumor and cancers as humans do. There are other animals that never get cancer. So who has this problem? Who doesn't have this problem? Hey, those animals that never get cancer, what's special about them? Those animals that do develop similar types of health problems, what can we learn from their experience? What causes and solutions and all of that? So identifying who else has the problem and who doesn't have the problem, and then why don't they have this problem? So I was doing this work with NASA a while back, and there was a guy from SpaceX and a guy from Blue Origin in the room. And the NASA people described their big bureaucratic problem, and they turned to the SpaceX and the Blue Origin experts and said, how did you all solve this problem? You know what they said? We didn't. We avoided that problem entirely. We are not a government organization. We don't have the same bureaucratic challenges and problems to solve that you all have to solve as NASA. That was a load off of NASA's mind. You know what? I think they had, some of the people in the room just sort of felt bad. Like, maybe we're not as smart as we think we are. How come those guys have figured out this thing and we haven't figured it out? And maybe we're not as smart as we thought we were. And then we sort of exposed that and we're like, oh, they actually didn't solve this problem. There's no imitable lesson we can draw from their experience. They just created a structure that avoided the problem in the first place. You know, could we do that? Maybe. Or in the absence of that, maybe it's just one of those hard problems that we need to go after in a different way. All right, so we kind of walk through looking at all the different facets we use as a way to kind of have that facilitated discussion. And then at the very end, we try to fill in the blanks in our little Mad Lib style sentence. How might we take some action? So that's the first blank we fill in. How might we take some action as we aim to achieve some objective? I did this one time where the initial problem description was, I don't have enough time. Anybody ever had that problem? I don't have enough time.
Never.
Right? Never. Right answer, Rachel. Nobody has ever had that problem. I don't have enough time, because that's the wrong problem. If we frame our problem in the I don't have X, then there's only one way to solve that problem: get X. I don't have a sandwich. The only solution to the I don't have a sandwich problem is get a sandwich. So it turns out I don't have enough time is not our real problem. What we came up with our problem statement is, how might we prioritize our activities to maximize our impact? How might we prioritize our activities to maximize our impact? Suddenly, this I don't have enough time problem is really about prioritization and measuring impact. And prioritizing, that's something I can do. Can I give myself more hours in the day? No, I cannot. Can I prioritize where I spend my time? Sometimes. And then maximize impact. Have we defined what impact we want to have? Back to the definition of novelty with impact. What change are we trying to make in the world? What difference are we trying to make? Oh, how might we get more time? I don't know. There's no way to do that. How might we prioritize our activities to maximize our impact? Oh my goodness, there's ways to do that. So the phrase I like to use is, the problem is never I don't have a sandwich. The problem is always I'm hungry, right? And when I'm hungry, maybe I need a sandwich, maybe I need a salad. Maybe I'm lonely and I just need a hug, but it feels like hunger. So maybe my solution is a hug. Maybe I'm bored and I need to go for a walk, and then I'll feel better, right? So as you think about your problem statements, your problem framing, more hunger, less sandwich. And I can see Casey drawing a picture of a sandwich as we speak. So this is our problem framing canvas. It's one of my favorite tools in the toolkit. We use it all the time. If you're not sure which of the 26 tools to start with this one. I think you legitimately can't waste time doing it, because even when we think we have consensus on what the problem is, this helps us confirm that we do have consensus, or it helps us understand and recognize that we don't have the consensus we thought we did. So any thoughts and questions on the, oh, very good, on the problem framing canvas? All right, so I put a link in the chat. You can go to itk.mitre.org, that's MITRE, to get access to the full set of all our tools. As you can see in this picture here, has a description of what is the tool, when would you use it, why would you use it, step-by-step instructions on how to use it, some facilitation techniques. There's a whole bank of other questions. You can swap questions in and out. So you can take the questions as they're given, but in the on the top list, you can delete and replace them with questions that are more relevant to your domain or your particular area of work. They're all, like I said, freely available. There's a blog with facilitation techniques and like a full suite of these various tools. So Casey, any other final thoughts with our final 4 minutes as we wrap up here?
Dan, I want to say thank you. And Rachel, would you mind going back to what you had there a second ago? You were just showing the toolkit. Would you mind sharing again? If you scroll to the top, all the way to the top, where it says toolkit, click the top, and then tools at a glance. If you just scroll down, just type in Lotus Blossom or problem framing canvas. What it should do is, there you go. If you, actually, do me a favor, go to the problem framing canvas. This is my favorite tool. I'll show you. This way it gives everybody a chance to see it if you don't mind. And I think it's all alphabetical. And one of the things that Dan and the team did is they essentially created PDFs and Word and Excel PDFs and PowerPoint documents that are designed to be printed out big, 11 by 17. So essentially, here's that canvas, you can print it out. And I've found with groups, it generally takes 45 minutes to work with a group to get through one of these. And so it's a step-by-step instruction on how to do these. I think that's one of the real strengths in this is that Dan can't be around to say how to use this. And so they captured Dan and the rest of the team's brain on how to use this is one of the strengths in that. And that's just one of the, 26 tools, I think, total overall?
I think 26. Yeah, I kind of lost track. It goes up and down a little bit.
And there's a large set of tools there, and they're all open source. Feel free to use them as much as you can. Yeah. Rachel, any thoughts before we do you have a closeout? Rachel, would you mind closing us out?
Sure. Thank you so much for coming and doing a really amazing presentation and just introducing us to these really cool tools. And then I think, if anybody is interested in doing a future session, just reach out for what, even participants. If you have something you're interested in doing or interested in learning, reach out. We're really open to whatever people want to do, and we really follow the energy on that. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.